video is to get a little bit deeper, but not too much deeper, into really what blended learning is as we move forward, and kind of why we want to take a look at blended learning in general. So blended learning really has been around since 2011, and if you were part of our really 8 through 12 grade team back in 2012, 13, and 14, you will have seen a lot of this already, because we were part of a study with the state of Ohio to do a blended learning initiative in the high school at that time. So that's where a lot of this information comes from, and where really blended learning got started. So kind of talked a little bit about that and real quick in that short video about what blended learning is, but it's a combination of blending of traditional learning with guided online learning in some way, shape, or form. And the big thing that you're going to hear over and over again if you do any reading on blended learning is that that time, place, path, or pace issue, in possibly all of them, being what changes it into blended learning from a traditional sense. So it's not just posting stuff online, it's putting things online that the students can do at their own pace, path, the time of their choosing, or if they're not at school, at their own place. Blended learning is not the same as technology-rich instruction. There are lots of time we do all kinds of cool things with technology in our classroom. That doesn't make it blended. If they don't have any of those 4 controls, then it's just really good online, really good technology-rich instruction. That doesn't mean it's blended. There's nothing wrong with technology-rich instruction. In fact, a lot of times people even confuse blended learning with online learning. If you're never at the school, you're doing online learning. It's not blended, because the blending part is the blending of online and brick and mortar instruction. So, oops, sorry, went a little fast past that one. So time, the learner, the student isn't restricted to the school day or sometimes even the traditional school year. In general, much of what we did during the COVID issue was, obviously they had a huge amount of fluidity with time. Some of us still did synchronous learning using Google Meet or Zoom, and at specific times that we did things, so you took away that time ability there, whereas asynchronous gives them time, but they're not mutually exclusive. Sometimes one's better than the other. Place, obviously, not restricted to our specific classroom. Path, that's one that many students struggle with and many teachers struggle with, making it so that students have choices, which is one of those things that we talk about with Moodle Flow. We can make it so students have all kinds of choice without us having to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. So we can make path something that students can choose as well. And obviously pace, especially with asynchronous learning, students have a lot of control over the pace at which they're doing that material. When it comes to that blending of online and brick and mortar, there are 4 main categories of blended learning, and the main one that we talk about in our study, and the main one that we did here at National Trail, was talking about the rotation model, where basically students rotate between the way they're doing things. They're getting traditional instruction, and now they're going to rotate stations or labs, or individually rotate and then do something else. The other alternative to that, which would work out really, really well with one of our possibilities coming forward, that if we end up doing a partial student population for parts of the days, would be to use this flipped classroom model, so that students get some of their instruction at home and some of their instruction at National Trail. So the first model is the rotation model. Basically, elementary school teachers have been doing this for years. They're rotating between stations. In the same way, in your classroom, you can rotate between stations exactly the same, where Some students are doing this with their laptops possibly in the high school or the middle school, and then they rotate, and maybe one of the stations is where they just work hand in hand with you, getting very personal feedback and instruction. So that's the rotation model. And there's really, at OETC in 2020, there was a lot of really great courses that I went to on how to use the rotation model in every single classroom, and the positive effect that the rotation models had, allowing teachers to have these small 5-person groups. When they're working with them, they're working in a very small group, and then they're doing different activities as they rotate about the room, so that maybe in an 80-minute classroom, you only have one-to-one with students for 20 minutes at that time, but it's much richer because you only have that with 5 students at a time, and you have these different rotation stations set up for students to do in between. So that's a rotation model. Online learning is anytime a student accesses that content online, and it can be blended, and that's what really we went more to an online learning situation during the non-traditional instruction time. And what we want to do is get to the point where we've got many of those things, and we already do here at National Trail. Many of the things that we're doing in the classroom on a daily basis flow perfectly to now the students at home. And I know that some of the grade levels, especially in the elementary school, had a really what I would consider a flawless transition almost, other than the technology piece and some students not having internet access and some students not accomplishing those things. But the assignment of those activities and the instruction was able to really make a very smooth transition for some teachers that already really were doing a large amount of blended learning in their classroom on an everyday basis. So when we look at those different models, we've already talked about the station rotation. I feel like I went back in time here. Lab rotation is where you would take your entire class to a lab. We don't need to do that at National Trail. Every single classroom has the devices to do that in classroom. We don't need to go somewhere else. Just so everybody pull out their laptops and we're going to do this activity now. So we don't really have a reason to do that. The flipped classroom model is something different that we really could do more of here, especially if we end up doing some kind of a classroom rotation where students are home half-time and at school half-time, where basically the idea of the flipped classroom is that instruction happens at home on their device, on their Wi-Fi, on their computer, watching usually asynchronous videos where you give them a 15-minute video to watch and a follow-up exercise. So the new instruction has already happened before they come to school, and then at school that's when we do those activities that enrich and make them more fully understand that basic lecture that they had when they were home. So blended is great. And if we were going to do anything where we come back and forth, that would be awesome. Also with the flipped classroom, it's an easy transition to online learning. So if you've already got videos made and set up where the students have their instruction online, and then they normally are coming in to do supplemental things, you could do the flipped classroom in a totally different way where you get the online lecture asynchronously. They watch the same video that you would have watched in a flipped classroom, and then you set up those times for Zoom or Google Meet so that you can talk to the students in a more individual manner and answer questions and help them work through exercises. So you could kind of, flipped classroom is a really nice transition to online learning if we were forced to go to a no brick and mortar in the future. Individual rotation basically just says that you're going to rotate between traditional and online activities. As you complete things, you'll just do it on your own instead of in a group with the class doing it all together. These are very much, none of these are new concepts here at National Trail. Many teachers already do all the things that we do with a blended lesson and an online lesson with their eDays. The thing that we found really during the non-traditional instruction is the need for that face-to-face instruction, the need to use your laptop and your webcam on your laptop or your IPEVO desktop camera, which is a perfectly good webcam, or another webcam, to do things like this class, where the students get to see you talking to them. Google Meets and Google Zooms are great. Sometimes, from the feedback I got from other teachers, the classes didn't go awesome. They kind of fell into disarray because it's a little more difficult to do any kind of classroom control when you're not sitting next to them, right? You do have some control. Obviously, you can mute students and you can turn off their video if you need to. But my point here that I was getting to is that the non-traditional instruction really brought about the evidence to many of us that just watching videos, just doing reading, just doing exercise was just not enough. They needed to see us, they needed to hear us, they needed to maintain that connection with us as teachers, which I don't think should be a surprise to anyone. Those connections that we make with our students are probably the single most important thing that happens during the school day. And without that connection, they're not going to be invested in the learning. And so us teaching it, or us at least doing an introduction every day to a new lesson, maybe we find a great video of somebody else teaching something. That doesn't mean we can't supplement or inject ourselves right into the discussion by doing things like this. I could have a YouTube playing right now, and I could pause it, and I could talk to my kids about it, and then I could unpause it, and I could hide myself, and I could be popped in and out of a YouTube video that somebody else did on instruction just as well. Sorry about the caveat on that. So that concept's not new. Obviously, we're trying to deliver online content and do activities with students, not just about giving you teaching, which this is very much like, but having them do some activities show that they learned it afterwards. So if they're home, they obviously have all those controls. They can do those things inside classrooms. When we did the blended learning grant in the high school, the objective was to do at least one blended learning lesson every week with your students, to do one of those rotation models so that they had that control. And then we were hoping to get feedback from the students on, where, how did you like that? Would you rather have me lecture at you, or would you rather have you watch it and be able to rewind and do it at your own pace? So anyways, and then you can integrate that content into any activity in Moodle that you use. You can have them take a quiz while they're doing a video. You can have it be a written assignment, an activity, anything that you can do in Moodle, you can inject instruction into with a video for that as well. We have a number of tools available here at National Trail that many teachers don't have at other schools. Obviously, some of you have smart boards, everybody else has Mimeo boards, some of you have smart slates. Everyone has a microphone that asks for one. If you didn't ask for one, I still have spares in my room. Some people have teacher tablets. Many of those were returned because they didn't enjoy them. In the elementary school, you have iPads that you can sync up, and you can actually write on your iPad and have that show up. You have document cameras. And lastly, the thing that we found out that a lot of teachers used during the non-traditional instruction was just using their phone and the camera there and the video there, something that teachers were more than comfortable with, to record videos that way. I think it's important to make our own content. In the blended learning grant, we did very little of that, quite honestly. We were using other people's content, bringing it in, and that's okay. It's not okay if that's all you do. If the students never see you, never feel they have interaction with you, you're just a link on the website, I think that we lose them that way. I think it's important that we post it to YouTube and then link it both in our Moodle calendar for assignments. Having everything in the Moodle calendar makes it so much easier for students. I've been doing it for 2 years, and my students, if you did a survey of them, would say that was the single biggest thing that they liked, was that they had one-stop shopping. They could just go to the calendar, they could see what was due when, and they could link to it really easily. And I have this last caveat down there, which I started adding in my own class. Possibly post videos to a Google folder for download. If you've got a student that has good Wi-Fi access at home, they don't need that. If you've got a student that's using their parent's hotspot to watch your YouTube video, a couple things can happen. Number one, which is what we had during NTI, was that students said, because we did 2 surveys, and 93% of the surveys said they had internet at home. But what we found out was many of the students that said they had internet were saying, my parents have a hotspot, I use that when I go home. But when they were home over the non-traditional instruction, their parents were at work, and so was their hotspot. So they had no internet until it came home. So if I have a Google folder linked in my class, and I also throw my videos in there, students then can download that folder to a flash drive, to their laptop, and when they go home they can watch it at their leisure without having an internet connection. So they don't lose the instruction just because they lost the internet. So I would say that's something that we need to start thinking about, that when we post our videos that we also post them there as well. And I'm trying to get myself to do that because it's hard to remember sometimes. The basics are have some content and have an assessment. That's for a blended learning lesson, an online lesson. There has to be content or it's not a lesson, right? And the objective is to have content that's 15 minutes or less per video. That doesn't mean 15 minutes for the day. I know during NTI that we set that limit to 30 minutes, at least in the high school. That doesn't mean I gave them a 30-minute video. I might give them 3 10-minute videos where they watch a video, do a little exercise, watch a video, do a little exercise. But 15 minutes, because we know no person has the attention span to watch a video for over 20 minutes and maintain their attention span. That's a scientific research fact. So if you're going 40 minutes on a video, you lost them somewhere. So same thing with our daily instruction. We need to break that up so that we can have students keep their attention span. So, like I said in this slide, look at it as a portion of your traditional class. And then you can use any kind of assessment that you want to on Moodle to make sure they viewed it, read it, and understood it. So to me, it should be formative in nature. That doesn't mean it has to. I guess you could have it summative. I'm not sure if you give a test every time you give a lecture, so I don't know why you give a test every time you give a video. And we've got all kinds of online tools as well as offline ones. If they don't have internet access, it's not like they can't write it on a piece of paper, right? And turn it in later. Or write it on their computer, just type it up and send it as an email when they have access. So we've got all those different tools available for the assessment portion of a lesson for students. That's basically it for blended learning. It's a combination of brick and mortar and online instruction. The more you integrate it in your classroom, the more easily you will divert to pure online. I'm going to bring up my classroom for a second to give you a look at one way to do some of the blended instruction and to post that. Okay, so what I started doing this summer is to put all my content and break it all up into a Moodle book. I'm still going to have activities that assess those things, but all the content is together in a Moodle book. And I went and redid all my course lectures, recording them and putting them in the book as well. So as we go through stuff in my class, this may be a traditional lecture if we're all in class. I'm not going to play this video. Maybe I will as an intro to class activity. And if I click on this, I'm not even sure. This one is right on that limit. Look at there. It's 14 minutes and 28 seconds long. And I've got text that's in there as well. So when I said reading and a video, I try to supplement both. But I've got it all broken down into smaller segments. And you can see this one. This one is not my video. This is somebody else's video that's 3 minutes long. And then down here at the bottom, I've got all the chapter video downloads. So if I've got a student, and I've got it linked right in my book, if I've got a student that doesn't have internet access, they can go and click on this link and download all the videos that I just had integrated with YouTube Now you can watch them there too, but when you watch a video there, it doesn't play quite as well as on YouTube, and it takes a lot longer to show up. The other thing students can then do is one of the things down here, it says print this book. And when I do that, it turns the entire thing into an interactive web page that has all the content on there with a table of contents they can click on, that they could then save this whole thing right to their computer that they're going to take home at night. And so that if they don't have internet access, they'll be able to get the content at least without it. And then I'm just going to have to email them or have them print off the activity that's associated with that particular content to do offline, so that all my instruction is available both online and offline. It's still blended learning. It's still allowing them to do it at their own pace and place and time. This in particular doesn't give any path, but I'm hoping to try to integrate that more into my classes in the future. But that's kind of one example of how you could do that in your class, having those things available so that if we go to a non-traditional instruction, they're already done. And if we don't, you've got all that extra instruction available to students that I may still do all that instruction in class, but I also have it available to my students outside of the traditional class day. So, to sum up, that's blended learning. Hopefully, if you have any questions, you'll email me, and I'll be happy to ask those and maybe add to this video if I need to.